Before we get started today, I want to give just a brief trigger warning. We're going to be talking about grief, loss, death, suicide, and mental health disorders and agoraphobia, or fear of leaving your house. So if you find that you're getting triggered, if you find that things are coming up for you and you need to step away, definitely step away, take care of yourself, ground down into your body, come back to your sense of the now, the here, the present, the safety. And then I definitely invite you to come back because our guest today has an amazing story and amazing tools and resources to help you on your healing journey. And first and foremost, take care of yourself. But when you feel ready, I invite you to come on back because our guest today is an incredible, incredible resource. So let me introduce you to her. So, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Healing Doesn't Have to Be Heavy podcast. I'm your host, Angie Barrett. I am a trauma informed coach, a play expert, a registered nurse, and I'm also a child abuse survivor. I help women use play and movement to connect to their bodies, releasing limiting self belief, stress, anxiety, tension, depression, and trauma. And I 100% believe that even though healing can be challenging, it doesn't have to always be heavy. There are moments of hope and of joy and of amazing stories of empowerment of people along the way. And so I'm so excited to bring you today's guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And for those of you that are listening on the audio podcast, she just has the best smile. So definitely go check her out. So I'm going to turn it over. My guest today is Amanda Ferrat. And Amanda, tell us about you and your story and how you got to where you are today.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, my name's Amanda Ferrat, and I have a business, Value Yourself Counseling. And in that business, I help women who hold marginalized identities or identify with that lovely oldest daughter syndrome, right? Learn to trust, love, and heal from things like grief, shame, anxiety, depression, limiting beliefs, trauma, patriarchal programming, right? All the things that we as women carry. And
Yes.
this allows women to build those healthier relationships, not only with themselves, but with others, and do it in a way that really gets you back into your core so that you are centered in your authentic self. And I do all of this through my framework, which utilizes advanced EFT tapping techniques. But it was quite the journey to get to where I am. I was thought I was going to become a licensed clinical social worker and had started on that path, moving from Montana out to Portland after, I went through college in Montana, moved out to the East Coast, gave that a try, came back to Montana for a while because my dad had been diagnosed with cancer. And so I spent some time at home, and then he could tell I was itching to be in a city or be somewhere else again. So, well, Dad, I'm actually looking at Portland because Portland State University had a really good social work program and they had school social work. I had done school-based mental health for a while I was in Montana and absolutely loved it. So I was like, becoming a school social worker would be amazing. So and Portland was actually the first big city I was ever brought to as a kid because my parents lived here before I was born and they took us to the Oregon coast. And so I love the Oregon coast and that's where I'm at now. So my dad was like, I'm okay with Portland because I had moved to less than an hour outside of New York City, less than a year after 9/11. So
Oh,
that was very terrifying for my family. But they were like, oh, she's a day's drive away and a very quick flight away. Yes, we can handle that. So I came out to Portland and eventually applied and got into grad school. And then, life kind of does what life does when you have other plans, right? It was basically
right.
like, uh, watch this. And a couple of years into grad school, my dad was, it became evident he was going to lose his battle with cancer. Actually, it became evident right around my birthday in July,
I'm so
which
sorry.
my birthday is tough because I also lost my grandma 2 days after my birthday, a couple of years prior to that. So, yeah, birthdays
You have a
haven't
lot
always
of
been
loss
fun.
around your birthday
I
anyway.
do.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, um, made the decision to take that fall off of grad school. That would have been the fall of 2016. Went home, spent 2.5 weeks, his last 2.5 weeks of his life with him, helping my mom caregive. And I'm so grateful for that time. But it was hard. It was, his passing was not easy. It was very traumatic. But again, oldest daughter, right? Oldest granddaughter. So, you suck it up and you do what I call the business of death, right? You get through the services, you
Yeah.
do all the things, supporting my mom. And then, I stayed home for a while, but then, right back to Portland, right back into grad school in January. And then February rolls around and I get a call, hey, your grandpa's dying. We need you to come home. So I come home in the middle of the semester and spend time with him, watch him pass away. And of course, again, oldest granddaughter, do all the things, run the funeral, etc. And then back into grad school, finish out those terms. And all through this, I'm having continual losses. I lost a pet that had been my emotional support animal for 10 years, literally put her down the weekend before grad school started again in the fall.
Oh my
So then,
word.
have that traumatic loss. She had kidney failure, then, stick it right back into grad school. And so then we get to December of 2017, and I've had all these other losses in between. And then it's my grandma and it's finals, but I have to go home because she's dying. So I go home and I'm literally finishing my finals at her bedside. I'm there as she, deteriorates and eventually passes. And then again, oldest granddaughter, plan all the things, do all the funeral.
Right.
Um, and then I stayed home for the holidays and then packed up, came back and jumped back into the next term in January. And in all of this, being the good eldest daughter and granddaughter and doing all the things and being a good student, there was no space or permission for me to grieve, for me to feel how I needed to feel. In fact, I, ended up having a pretty emotional response when I was first starting the caregiving with my dad. And my mom basically was like, there's no room for that. Suck it up. I need your help. If you
Oh,
can't kind of get like, yeah, if you can't get it together, like this isn't going to work. So I felt like there was no space for my emotions at all. Like I just had to kind of get her done, as they
yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And, in Montana, when you're a part of our ranching family, yeah, you just gotta do what it takes. And so um life imploded as it does when we aren't given permission or aren't given the space or the tools, right, to heal and grieve and be emotional beings like we are. And so um yeah, some things happened with grad school because I was at a really stressful internship. Because I'm also kind of a social justice activist, and I was watching things happen in a school actually where most of our student body was, Black and brown bodies, a lot of immigrants, and of course, administration was white. And I was watching things happen that just didn't align with my values. So on top of that, right, like trying to just navigate all these
Yeah.
spaces and hold all these things, and life imploded. And my physical health was deteriorating as well as my mental health. But I took that break from grad school again, and I got that wave of relief at first, right? Like, oh, I get a break. I get to, so kind of rode that wave, and then it came crashing down,
Yeah.
and depression, anxiety, all kind of crept in. Um, I would be out in public, and things that I was not aware of on a conscious level, but my subconscious would pick up on them, would trigger my grief, and I would start to fall apart in public. And unfortunately, our society, our culture here in America doesn't know what to do when people are grieving and falling apart. So
When
people
people
would
are
kind of
having
just make
emotions in general.
right, right. But
Yeah.
especially if you're losing it in the aisle at Target for no apparent reason, right?
Well,
Like just looking at toothpaste, right? People will kind of make a wide berth around you and just be like, and so I actually started to not want to go out in public unless I was going somewhere specific like therapy or,
yeah.
or with somebody safe and going with them to a safe place. So I kind of became mildly agoraphobic, wasn't leaving my house, having groceries delivered, all that kind of stuff, and was basically in kind of functional freeze,
Yeah.
and was barely functional at that. So I'd get up, kind of get myself up and maybe last for a little while. And then I was on the couch and it was a lot of Netflix and just zoning out, basically, pretty much dissociating and numbing out. And then I kind of was like, this isn't working for me. I know this isn't healthy. I know this isn't, functional. Um, how can I grieve and honor that I'm on this journey where I need to heal, that I'm actually healing, right? That I'm not just staying in this stuck place of functional freeze and allowing myself to kind of dissociate and stay in these spaces. And I did have a therapist, or I got connected to a therapist and got that started. I also was coming up on my 40th birthday. So I got myself a dog. I'd always been a cat person, but I wanted an Akita. I'd fallen in love with that breed. And I was like, you know what, for my 40th
Wow.
birthday, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
become a dog mom and I'm going to work on getting him to be a service animal. And so got him for my 40th birthday and tried, doing all of that. That was a little bit of a double-edged sword because, of course, when you go out with this cute puppy in public, you get a lot more attention than you're really ready for. And people don't always, know how to approach you when you're training a service animal. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of rough to navigate, but it threw me back into the world, right, of having to interact with folks. Um, and so started on that journey, started kind of getting out there, um, taking classes or workshops or going to conferences and things, just kind of seeing what was out there in the world, right? Because I learned I did not want to go back to grad school, that it
Ah.
wasn't for me,
Hmm.
that I was tired of being a part of an institution that was going to teach me all the ways that I could take care of everybody else and solve all the problems of the world, supposedly, but not take care of myself and solve my own problems, and didn't give me
Yeah.
space and or permission to do so. That wasn't going to work for me. And realized kind of how toxic higher education can be, especially, the world of social work, and especially where our world was at that time. And I just was like, this isn't what I want anymore. And I'm going to go explore what the world, kind of has and take some time to take care of me.
Hmm.
And so um, realized that also part of what had been, I had a toxic boss when I had first moved out to Portland who literally abused self-care. She would micromanage our self-care because I worked in, community-based mental health and behavioral health services. And so, they wanted us to make sure we were taking care of ourselves, but she would micromanage our self-care. I'm like, that kind of takes the self out of self-care. You're not
Okay.
allowing me to do my things for me the way I want to. And I have to like report them back to you. That's self-care. And then grad school in my kind of our practicum or whatever, that was also all about self-care. But again, not in a way that actually was functional. And I was like, I know that self-care is part of healing. It has been so like made so traumatic for me.
Yeah.
How do I reclaim this? How do I take this and make this something that works for me? And so I think I won't, I have this like vague picture of my head at my desk, like going through organizing things. And I remember finding like the wellness wheel. And I was like, let's take the wellness wheel and let's take self-care and let's put those two things together and let's unpack this a little bit
Well,
and
Amanda,
kind of
I'm going to interrupt you really fast if I
yeah.
can. What is the wellness wheel? Just in case
So the
anybody who's
wellness,
listening doesn't know
yes,
what that is.
right. So the wellness wheel has 8 aspects. So it is physical health, mental or intellectual health, spiritual, social, um, occupational, environmental, financial. I always forget one. Maybe emotional. I think emotional is what I forgot in there because there's mental and intellectual, and then there's emotional.
Okay.
So basically, like if you are doing whole person wellness, you are making sure you're doing things in each of those sectors to, take care of yourself. So let's apply that to self-care. So, okay, what does financial self-care look like, right? Because not very many people are going to think about financial self-care.
No.
Well, if you create a budget for yourself, or if you set your bills up on auto pay, or you have money dates with yourself, or you're making sure, you pay your bills on time, or whatever it is, it's financial self-care. Some people joke and call it adulting, right? But no, it's financial self-care.
Huh.
And so, okay, because obviously when you're in depression, you might not be taking care of things. So like, right, let's take care of financial self-care, right? We gotta do what we need to do there. Occupational, I was still figuring that out, but I was like, okay, what is it going to take for me to go back into the workforce? What is that going to look like? What is it going to be for me to be supported? Because again, my physical, I had held in so many emotions and I do have an autoimmune, but like my physical health at that point had started to deteriorate. And I was like, so if I do go back to work, I'm going to have to ask for accommodations. What is that going to look like? How is that going to feel? Right? Mental health. Let's unplug from Netflix and read a book.
Yeah.
It's, so just all those different aspects. And of course, obviously, after you've had a lot of loss, like I had, I've never been a super religious person, but bringing back in that spirituality, what does that mean? And one of the things I had done when my grandma had passed away. I was home over Christmas, and Christmas didn't look or feel the same, right? I had lost all the people that cared about Christmas. And again, I'd never been super religious. We weren't a super religious family, but we did celebrate Christmas and it was always made special. But those people were gone. And I was like, you know what? I've always been leaning a little more towards paganism. We're doing a winter solstice celebration. And I was like, you can either get on board or you can not come, but I'm going to do a winter solstice feast. We're going to do a couple of rituals, right? And so I started exploring paganism, and like that was my spiritual health,
Yeah.
and self-care. And that's been phenomenal. It's been something that totally brings me joy. And if I, don't take care of that on a regular basis and protect some of those holidays like winter solstice and summer solstice and those things, like I feel the impact of that now. So that's
Okay.
what the whole, yeah, go for it.
I just have to jump in here because I've never met anyone else that celebrates winter solstice. I do too. And I
Yes.
lived in Alaska for many years,
Oh,
and we celebrated winter solstice. That was a
yeah,
celebration. We'd have parties, people, I mean, that was a celebration because that was the shortest day of the year. Life was going to get better, life was going to get longer. And so
yeah,
I've always celebrated winter solstice because for me it signifies the light is coming, the summer's coming,
yeah,
the great times are coming. So I love that. Yay. Okay. Anyway, I just had to jump into
yeah.
that
And I've
because I
gotten
love that.
friends and family on board, and
Yeah.
yeah. So um and yeah, I have crystals all throughout my house. I've always loved rocks and crystals, but now I have a reason to collect them even more.
Great.
But yeah, so I just was like, okay, whole person self-care, looking at the wellness wheel, let's plug those things in together. And then, grief wasn't done with me yet. I lost a good friend. We'd gone through high school and college together, and then he married a sorority sister of mine, whose actual sister, who was also a sorority sister, was one of my very dearest friends. So we'd gone, through high school, college, and then into adulthood, in those close circles.
Yes.
And he died by suicide,
Oh.
and that was in 2019. And from 800 miles away, I immediately jumped in and was supporting this family in kind of, making sure they were taking care of themselves in the whole, sense of the wheel. And like, here's some money, go out to a dinner date for my friend and her husband, because
Mhm.
they had been on scene to clean up and had, that
Oh.
trauma. And here's some rites and rituals. Here's some, like plugging in all those kinds of things. And, you know, did things from afar, and then got home and was helping there, kind of boots on the ground, and then was there in September. And we did an out of the darkness walk and like all those things. And I kind of remember coming back after that and going, I'm not burnt out. I set boundaries. I took time to take care of myself through all of
Mhm.
this because it was a loss I was experiencing as well. And I didn't ignore that while also taking really good care of everybody else. Like,
Mm.
how do I, like, let's go back to the occupational, well, like self-care. Like,
The light
how
bulb
do I,
started going off.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's time for me to go back to being a productive member of society. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what are the two things I know? Self-care and grief. So I decided to become a grief and self-care coach. So I got ready to launch that and started going to networking events and doing all these things and kind of getting out there, and met with the business coach and doing all this stuff. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh, well, how do you run a business if you can't go talk to people? Well, thankfully, everybody turned to online, and there
Mhm.
was tons of business coaches and people out there willing to teach you all the things. I was like, perfect. I always have been a lifelong learner. So I jumped in and met different business coaches and was learning all the things I could learn to learn how to be an entrepreneur. And, because I'm really good at like the client side, like helping people, but I didn't know how to set up a payment process or like like I had no clue
Yeah.
where to start. Right. And so, in all of that, one of my business coaches brought on Jackie McDonald to do an EFT tapping demonstration. And at this point, I had tried, good old CBT, talk therapy, DBT, EMDR, hypnotherapy, all the things, right? I had tried them all. And they were great. They were all tools. I continued to put tools and resources in my toolbox, but none of them was that big shift, right? Like things were still sitting in my body, things were still, heavy in the subconscious. And so I knew that Jackie was going to be on, and I wanted to see what that was all about because I love all things, healing and within. So Jackie kind of talked about it, and then she started to do a live demo and had us tapping along with her. And it was a fairly global tapping. Um, but I instantly was bawling because it struck on some pretty heavy stuff right away for me. But I also just felt this huge energetic shift in my body that I had not felt in any of those other modalities that I had been trying. And it literally felt like this weight of the world had just gotten lifted off and everything was a little bit lighter. And again,
Wow.
very global tapping, very short. And I'm sitting there just bawling. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this for myself. And this is what I want to do in the world. This is amazing. And so I was like, please tell me that there's a way to learn how to do this. And sure enough, Jackie was launching a program. And I was like, how do I get you my credit card number? Like, let's do this.
Right.
And then I found out she had an advanced program, which of course is again, as a lifelong learner and somebody that had wanted, the credentials of an MSW and then was going to be a licensed therapist, right? Like, yes, let me go deeper because I appreciate going deeper. And I love that in the advanced, we learned how to go even deeper and we can go back and we can do that trauma healing and we can go back and work on inner child and all these parts of self. And it's just this really beautiful way to take EFT to that deeper level because I like to joke that I'm the fluffiest, non-fluffy person you'll ever meet, meaning, I'm nice and squishy. I like to go deep. I like to go dark. I can sit with you in the hardest, darkest, scariest spaces because I've been to some of those places.
Yeah.
And I've been in them alone. I've been in them when I've been shamed to be in them or have lost relationships because I didn't know how to get out of those places. And the people that were in my life couldn't meet me there. And so it was easier for them to just leave.
Yeah.
And so I know what that's like. And I don't ever want anybody else to have to experience that if they can avoid it. Um, and I love that your name of your podcast is healing doesn't have to be heavy because I've done the heavy lifting. I've been in healing that's heavy and I've gotten to see the other side of that. And like I said, I do like to do the heavy lifting and the deeper healing, but EFT is such a beautiful tool because you can meet people where they're at. And being trained in the advanced, we're trained to not re-traumatize, not like if something is triggering, we know how to put it away, put it back, right? Like the subconscious is a beautiful thing, but our brains are truly there to protect us, but they also like throw things forward and be like, hey, are you ready for this yet? And if you're not, we can put it away. We can come back to it later again, or we can go in and identify like, is that your 5-year-old self that needs some love? Is it your wounded warrior? Like, where are you needing this thing tended to? How can we rework that trauma and those emotions around that moment? So it's just a really amazing tool that I am so thankful that I've gotten to use for myself. Because as we went through the program, of course, we had to do tapping sessions with buddies.
Yeah.
So we were getting our own healing and learning like in, practical application for ourselves. And that was really powerful. We can, so most of us, have a tapping buddy still to this day that we can kind of call on if we need some of that support, and to keep utilizing our tools, for ourselves. But EFT. And for those who don't know, EFT stands for emotional freedom techniques. And it's just an amazing combination of Eastern and Western practices. So Eastern, that part is where you are literally tapping on acupressure meridian points on your body. So your face and kind of upper body while you're walking through some like talk therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, CBT kind of stuff. So that's the Western part, right? Like that Western part is that therapeutic-y, talky, let's play with the subconscious part, while the tapping is let's calm that nervous system. Let's move from parasympathetic to sympathetic to parasympathetic. I always mix those up, right? And from having your amygdala just being on fire, right? And like being bombarded if you are in emotional distress to kind of putting that fire out a little bit at a time, coming back to. But what I also really love about emotional freedom techniques, especially in the way that I was taught it and do it as a practitioner, you aren't gaslighting yourself. You aren't bypassing your emotions. It's not rooted in toxic positivity. One of the stages is venting. Like you literally, if you are at an intense enough level for whatever you're experiencing, you have permission and you like, that's where we start. We vent it out. So you can rage, you can cry, you can like, we give whatever's showing up the space that it needs instead of being like, okay, let's hurry up and get to positive affirmations and be all light and fluffy and like, no, like, we're going to meet you where you're at. We're going to do the work that needs to be done. And that's our end goal, right? But, and it's again, while we might be doing something that feels heavy, it does take some of that weight off of it because you're doing it with a practitioner. They're in that beautiful partnership where really it's how willing you are to kind of let that guard down and go deep. But we meet you where you're at and we like really we use your own language back.
Mm.
We, it's just this beautiful way of kind of gently holding up a mirror, reflecting some things back, maybe seeing where there's some resistance and working around that. And that it just does it in ways that, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR don't do. And now there's been research. Dr. Peta Stapleton is an amazing researcher. She's got her book, The Science Behind Tapping, and she continues to do research to this day on a variety of ways that EFT is utilized. And they are finding that it works quicker and is longer lasting than CBT. And it is now catching up and it is starting to surpass EMDR.
Do you know, it's interesting that you say that because I actually heard a very similar study about somatic work in general. And for
Yes.
anybody that doesn't know, somatic work is learning how to experience sensations and emotions in your body in ways that feel safe because we
Yeah.
are so disconnected from our bodies. And
Right. We
EFT is,
can't connect we're not like those. So my favorite movie is the movie Labyrinth, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's the fire eaters, right? That like they can take their heads off.
yeah.
We can't take our heads off. There's no disconnect from brain to heart, right? And brain to body. Like we are connected, mind, body, and soul. And like that's what I love about EFT and other somatic practices is it honors that we are a system.
And I love that EFT allows for so yes, I say healing doesn't have to be heavy. There are going to be heavy moments as you're on your
Right.
healing journey. 100% grief, trauma, all of that create that deep pain and those deep
Right.
wounds. And there are options, coaches, guides,
Right.
modalities that make it so it doesn't have to be so painful. And like
Yes.
you, Amanda, as I was on my journey healing from child abuse, I experienced so much of that by myself. I was in that dark pit of despair by myself with no hope. And so when I did find a therapist who did do EFT, I did do EFT with her. I did EMDR. And for those of you that don't know that are listening, EMDR is a type of therapy where for the most part, there are different ways of doing it, but in general, you watch a light go back and forth, and the idea is that it activates into more areas of your brain to help
Yep.
process and desensitize. Um, and the somatic piece is same thing for me, working somatically. For me, mine is with play and movement, but learning how to have that somatic piece to be in my body and not go
Yeah.
into overwhelm and shutdown and to bridge that mind body gap rather than have this big, brick wall that wasn't letting anything through. And so the trauma was trapped in my body and my brain was off binge watching Netflix. Same thing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah. So grief, trauma, they're so intertwined. Will you give us an example of what EFT is? Do you mind kind of giving us an
Yeah.
example of EFT?
Um, so I don't want to give it all away, what I
Yes.
love to teach people, and there's tons of apps, there's YouTubes, there's right. So if you do want to start it on your own, go for it. What I will say, right, is if you've similar to like if you've never gone to a gym before and you've never used equipment, you can probably go in there and like figure it out, right? They have pictures or instructions, but you're going to have better form and you're going to get better results if you have a personal trainer. Same thing with EFT. You're going to get farther, have deeper healing, have quicker results if you have a practitioner, but there is ways you can kind of do it on your own. But the tool that I like to teach people to use is actual finger tapping. So you take like two fingers from one hand and you get your other hand and you kind of spread your fingers out and you tap along the nail of the side of the finger, along the side of the nail bed. And you just tap several times on each finger. Then you move up to the next finger, tap a few more times there, move up kind of all your way, make your way from your pinky to your thumb and then back down again. And you just keep doing that. And you can, if you are somewhere where you can talk out loud to yourself, you can, whether it's like, oh, I'm really mad right now. And it's okay that I'm mad. This anger is real. I feel it in my body, whatever. Or if you're like, okay, I feel really anxious right now, but I know that I'm safe. I'm safe because I can see this, and this. I can smell this, and this, right? Whatever you need to do to kind of check back into your body, because that's going to activate again that shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic, start to calm the amygdala down, get us from primal brain up to that frontal, lobe. And kind of, again, it's doing something on your body, getting you back into your body. And what I love about teaching people finger tapping is you can do it under a table or desk. In fact, I wish I had known about tapping when I did school-based mental health, because I could have taught all of my kids how to finger tap, and they probably would have been able to regulate and stay in classes and get themselves through situations where instead they didn't have that tool and they were blowing out of class or having altercations, right? Or having things like tuning out from learning. So it's a way that if you are in a situation that's bringing up an emotion and you can't get up and move out of that space, right? You can kind of start to finger tap. I've actually found myself, I did it in traffic once, because I was in a situation where it was just super stressful, and I just totally subconsciously took one hand off the wheel, and you can use your thumb to tap alongside your four other fingers and just kind of keep, going back from pinky to pointer and back again with your thumb. And I was like, oh, yeah, that works. To able to kind of take a breath and recompose myself and calm my anxiety in, Portland crazy city traffic. And so I love to pass that along, that it's a great tool that you can use in the moment if you feel yourself getting activated, anxious, whatever, any emotion really, right? That where you kind of need to rein it in. Because unfortunately, in our society, there are more spaces than not where we can't truly show our true emotions, right? Where we have to kind of hold it together until we can get somewhere that allows the space and gives us that permission and that safety to have our true human experience with our emotions.
I have always done that finger tapping, the thumb to the pink. I do that when I get nervous all the time. And I never
Right.
realized that was
And a
actually
lot of people do it on the tip, but if you kind
yeah.
of do it on the side of the nail
Huh,
beds, that's where you're getting those acupressure points, on the side of the nail beds, on the side of the finger.
huh. I'm going to switch how I do that finger tapping that I didn't realize I was self-soothing. I mean, I knew it was a self-soothing behavior, but I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was part of EFT. Yeah, there's so many. Amanda, thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
story with us and all of that. There are so many ways, um, just so many things out there that we do that we might not realize are giving us that light and that hope. And
Right.
for me, like tapping on my fingers was one of them. I also do a side to side sway. I teach people
Yep.
how to do a sway. Anything that our nervous systems like rhythmic and repetitive. So that's one of the
Yes.
reasons also that tapping does work so well is it's rhythmic and repetitive. Think of if you're soothing a baby or soothing a child, you're soothing your own
Yeah.
wounded inner child, your own nervous system. And so the more repetitive finger tapping, like I said, I do a
Yeah.
sway a lot of times for that same reason. When I do it at the grocery store, going to the grocery store gives me horrible anxiety. And so I'll
It's
notice I'm
awful.
tapping and swaying. I'm doing them both at the same time because I'm needing to regulate. And so
Yeah.
the more tools that we can have, the lighter that our healing journey can become. So this is
Yes.
amazing. I love that. Oh, yay.
Well,
Thank
and I'll give
you.
one other little trick. So
Please.
one of the tapping spots is not right on your collarbone, but about an inch below both collarbones is kind of is a tapping point. So this is another inconspicuous way you can do it. People like to, and this way it crosses the hemispheres, you can give yourself kind of a butterfly hug and tap. But if you, again, are somewhere where you can't get away with like tapping on yourself and talking out loud without people being like, what are they doing? You can kind of prop yourself up on your elbow with your left hand and put those left fingers right
Mhm.
above your heart and right below the collarbone into that tapping spot, and just kind of tap. And then you've got that kind of, your hand is over your heart. So you're kind of checking in with your body that way, checking in with your breathing, right? Because you can kind of feel yourself breathing, and then you're tapping on that spot. And again, it can be completely inconspicuous. Nobody has to even, possibly see what's going on. And it's another way to kind of, again, get back into our bodies, kind of check back in and kind of come back to center.
That is amazing. That is fantastic. So all of you listening, if you didn't try it when Amanda was talking you through it, try it now. Because if you weren't watching the video, I don't know if you noticed this, but my shoulders dropped like 3 inches as soon as I started doing the tapping. And so it really, I'm a huge fan of tapping, and I love the way that you explain it. It's
Well,
beautiful.
if I'm fighting a yawn, because that's another response, like,
Yeah.
that will start to yawn or those kinds of things. Like your body's just that shifting again from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And a lot of times people are like, it felt so weird. And it's like, that's like, you've probably been in functional freeze or whatever for a really long time. And that's your body's like, oh, I get to, oh, I like this.
And it feels so unusual because you don't know what it feels like to
Exactly.
be in relaxation or rest and digest
Right.
that portion of your nervous system. Yeah. Your body's like, what? Danger, danger. Mine did at first. And so just know, as you're listening to this, if you do start doing some of these techniques that we're talking about and your body kind of freaks out, that's normal, because for
Right.
most of us who have been in, trauma survivors or been in constant grief, that constant state of fight or flight, our bodies become conditioned to that. And so
Oh,
when
yeah.
we come out of it, it can feel really uncomfortable, really
Right.
awkward. And so that's when that giving yourself permission for self-care that Amanda was talking
Yes.
about in all of the different areas becomes so important. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort, because
Yes.
you're going to move through it when you allow yourself to feel that discomfort, as long as you're in an
Yes.
environment that feels safe and all of that. So
Yes.
it's beautiful. I love it. I have never thought of financial self-care in the way that you described it today. And now my mind is blown. So I'm loving the fact that I've been doing financial self-care by putting my bills
Right.
on auto pay and not having to
Right.
think about it. Um,
Yeah,
I've
and I
never,
have a coach that always talks about like she has a money date with herself every week to kind of just check in and like not only like, see what her balances are, do that kind of like stuff, but like, hey, what do I want to manifest this week? What are my goals? How would it feel if I got 3 more clients or whatever that is, right? For her. Um, and then, like occupational is another one that people don't think about. What is your work environment set up? Is it ergonomically like set up? Are you like always hunched up like this at a computer? Do you have things that are pleasant to look at where if you need to, you can like check into something, visually pleasing on the wall? You'll see if I move, you'll see a paint swatch. Like I'm working on this space. This is my home office. But yeah, and then, like environmental, what does your home environment look like? What is your like, are you getting out? Are you touching, some people would be like, oh, they need to touch grass. I try to get my toes in the grass, or I live on the Oregon coast, like in the sand, whenever possible, or my face in the sun. We live in the Pacific Northwest, or I do. And so we've got those gray days, but like the sun just started to peek out. Like we'll run out there in those moments of like, we call it lizarding, right? Like hurry up, go go get in the sun. So yeah, what are you like doing to just kind of again get back into your body in a way that's honoring those different things,
I love
and
that.
take good care of yourself?
Those little things add up to make that
Yes.
journey and that process not so heavy. Make it so that when you do get into those painful struggles, and they're going to come, that
Yeah.
you have an outlet or hope or something to look forward to help you navigate those really, really painful times.
Well,
So,
and so many people think self-care is inaccessible, right? That it has to cost a lot of money or you have to have, and it's like, no, it really can be as simple as going outside, taking your shoes off and putting your bare feet in the grass
yeah,
and your face in the sun.
yeah. I, yeah, it self-care doesn't have to be this big, going to the spa, because I
Right.
don't always like people touching me, and so sometimes that actually creates more trauma. So
Right.
yeah, no, I love it. Oh my gosh, Amanda, this is amazing. I could talk to you for hours, but you have a
Thank
special
you.
gift for our listeners, don't you?
I do. So I have these wonderful free sessions called Activate Empowerment. And so it's a way for you to kind of come in, get some Amanda flavored support, and we can kind of talk about, what that would look like for you to, utilize EFT or any of the other tools that I utilize. But I, again, kind of come in, talk about things, walk away with a few actionable kind of resources or ways to support yourself. So those are just ways that I'm offering some time and attention to kind of help people, you know, feel a little bit better because life is a little bit heavy right now.
Yes, it is for many of us. So,
Yes.
what is the best way for people to get in touch with you? By the way, we'll drop the link for those in the show notes, but what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm on both Facebook and Instagram, just under Value Yourself Counseling. So that's kind of the easiest way to find me. And then that has like my website and my email and all the different things on those places. So yeah, just look for Value Yourself Counseling, Amanda Ferrat, and you will find me.
Fantastic. We'll also drop the link in the show notes. So everybody go check out Amanda, check out her resources, try the tapping, and see if EFT is a modality for you that helps you to find that aha moment for you, that
Yes.
helps you find that shift. So Amanda, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your amazing story and your EFT, your wisdom, your knowledge, and thank you for sharing us with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
My pleasure. And so, thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. And if you are looking for another way to get into your body, to give yourself permission to feel, I also have dropped the link for my free, short, less than 5 minute playful movement sequence that you can do when you need some instant calm. It's a game changer. I do it regularly. So that also is down in the show notes. So definitely grab that so that when you need it, you can use some playful movement to also help release it, give you another tool for your toolbox. So thanks for joining in, and we'll catch you on the next show with our next fantastic, fabulous guest. And until then, I hope that oh, Amanda, I forgot to ask you my 2 questions that I ask for
I was
everyone.
gonna say, what about the two
Yeah,
questions?
I have 2 questions for you. I was wrapping that up. So my 2 questions that I ask everybody. If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about your healing journey, what would you change?
I think I would change the timeline just a little bit, that I came to some of my realizations maybe just a little bit sooner. Because I feel like I did lose quite a bit of kind of time, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of that, if I had only known then what I know now, right? But yeah, just that time that I kind of spent not even accessing my own wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then, kind of the opposite, if in 12 months we were to sit down and talk again, where would you want your healing journey to be that it's not now?
I live in a conservative rural community, and I've taken a lot of um, flack around my queerness and how I show up in my community. I'm also, social justice activist. And I think part of what the healing that I need to do is some of that like trust and confidence. So in 12 months from now, um, even though lots of people think I'm pretty badass, I would like to have even more of that kind of like empowered sense of self when I'm facing those moments of kind of that feel like they could be potential harm, right? Like that I
Yeah,
have some more of that kind of strength and kind of empowerment in those moments.
I love it. I love it. That's really, really powerful. Thank you. All right, everybody. So tune in next time. Amanda, you're an inspiration. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
And listeners, I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, have some fun, find some joy, and find a little light in your life on your journey. Bye, everybody.